Hello, welcome to the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. This is a podcast for people with brains who want to improve their brain function. So, couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if you are a supporter on Patreon, thank you so much. It's so appreciated and it helps us continue getting these out there. So if you're not a supporter and you'd like to support us, head over to patreon.com/AIBI for Adventures in Brain Injury. Also, I'm working with clients and helping them to navigate a medical crisis, essentially. So if you have a loved one in recovery, either right after a brain injury, going through recovery, or out like pretty much recovered, and you just want to complete the hero's journey and start helping others, I love coaching people to get to that place and to pay their fortune forward. And today we are talking to Dr. Terry Wallace, well, first of all, let me tell you how to get a hold of me for consultations. Just email me at consult@feedabrain.com or go to feedabrain.com/consult, fill out the questionnaire, and schedule a phone call with me. So, speaking of survivors completing the hero's journey, today we have Dr. Terry Wallace on the podcast again. If you don't know Dr. Terry Wallace's story, it's phenomenal. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, secondary progressive, so it was really bad. And she was doing the conventional care model, which was all sorts of drug trials and drugs that were immunomodulating, meaning they affected the immune system so that her body would stop attacking herself. And the way they did it was by reducing her immunity, period. So that wasn't very healthy, wasn't very sustainable. She started a diet and lifestyle program, and she cured herself of MS by all outward appearances. So we're going to talk with her about her experience. Additionally, I mean, she does research, and this is what I really love about her, is that she has done the research and she makes sure that it stands up to scientific scrutiny, and she is doing studies currently to really bring knowledge of the importance of nutrition, diet, and lifestyle. She was actually awarded in 2018, the Institute for Functional Medicine awarded her with the Linus Pauling Award for her contributions in research, clinical care, and patient advocacy. So check out this interview. She's revising her book, and it's going to be even better. So without further ado, here's Dr. Terry Wallace. Hello, Dr. Wallace.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fantastic. It's been a ride, as I'm sure it has been for you as well.
Yes.
So I like all the poops in the background too.
Yes, poop is so important.
It really is. So when we last spoke with you, you had released the Wahls Protocol, which was a huge help to me in my recovery. Mm-hmm. And now you're about to release the revision of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, there's been so much progress in the intervening 5 years that I really needed to get that into the book. I've made a bunch of tweaks and refinements to the dietary plan, so I want to be sure everyone was aware of that. And there's so much more research on the benefits of ketosis and the many ways that we can get into ketogenic eating and longevity. So I wanted to be sure that we included all of that in this information. You know, and part of it is, you know, my book is so popular, it's still selling very, very well. that I just felt obligated to be sure that people had the most current and correct information.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for our listeners who are not aware of your story, do you wanna give us a rundown
Oh, yeah.
of your recovery?
Yeah, so I have multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed in 2000, and being an academic internal medicine physician, I wanted to see the best people in the country. Took the newest drugs, costing tens of thousands of dollars every month. Went continually downhill. After 3 years, my physicians told me about the work of Lauren Cordain. After being a vegetarian for 20 years, I went back to eating meat. Gave up all grain, all dairy, all legumes. Continued to go downhill anyway. I took more potent drugs, including the new biologic drugs. Relentlessly went downhill. By 2007, I was unable to sit up. It was a struggle to walk 10 feet. I was having brain fog, and I was having trigeminal neuralgia, which had been getting relentlessly worse.
Could
And
you tell
so
our audience what trigeminal neuralgia is?
Oh, yeah. So these are
Painful.
random jolts of electricity across the side of my face, either on the left or the right side. They come on randomly. When they were turned on, a light touch, sound, uh, light, speaking, swallowing would trigger the pain. And so, I'd stop swallowing, I'd start drooling. I couldn't really talk, I couldn't walk. I'd go to the pain clinic, get injections, I'd get daily doses of Cytomedrol. And so my fear was that, I was coming to terms with I was going to be bedridden, I was going to be demented, and I'd not yet come to terms with my trigeminal neuralgia being stuck permanently on and having all of my sensory input transmuted into these intense electrical jolts, really incapacitating pain.
Yeah. Just a quick neurology lesson. The trigeminal nerve is the largest sensory cranial nerve in the brain, and
It covers
it's
your face.
painful. Yeah.
And when that turns on, and all of your sensory input is coming through this pain, that was a very grim future.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, I'd been reading the basic science, I was reading ancestral health, I discovered functional medicine, was reading that, and I then had this really big aha moment, like, I should take those things I was using in supplement form, figure out where they were in my food supply, redesign my paleo diet in a very specific way, which again took several more months of research. And I did that. And then to my amazement, my pain stopped, my brain fog went away, my energy went up, and it was easier to sit up. And then I began walking with a cane. And then I began walking without a cane. Then I got on my bike and I biked around the block the first time in 6 years. And within another 6 months, I got on my bike and I did an 18.5-mile bike ride with my family. So this really transformed how I thought about disease and health. It transformed the way I practiced medicine because I started talking to my patients about diet and lifestyle, environmental factors. And it would ultimately transform the research. And at the University of the VA, I was given the resources to start conducting clinical trials, testing the way I was understood disease and health. So I tested my protocols and others with progressive MS with remarkably positive results. And then we've done other studies in the setting of relapsing remitting MS, larger studies. We got $1 million from the MS Society to do a much larger study. And we've just been given $2 million to do a larger study still. And so we are now testing the effect of diet and lifestyle, and we'll be comparing that to usual care.
That's excellent. You've come a long way from.
We have come a long way.
Absolutely.
And so we're talking about all of that in the new book. about the progress that's been made, how we've refined the dietary intervention, how we've refined ketosis and ketogenic eating, and of course, all of the exciting research that we've done and others have done in these areas.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've for myself, I've noticed that I can eat less and less and less, and be far more ketogenic, and be fueled by ketones, um, while still making sure that I'm supplying the nutrients for my brain and
Yeah,
nervous system.
you know,
So, what
uh,
is your take on
so
keto?
so I think keto, very powerful stuff. The reason humans survived all these millions of generations is that our mitochondria can burn either fat or carbs or protein according to what's available. During the winter, you could hunt meats and you'd eat meat, or not eat and burn your own fat. During the summer, there's more carbs around, so we'd often shift to more of a carbohydrate burner during the summer. And during the winter, you're burning either protein or fat.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us a lot more resiliency in terms of surviving and thriving in a variety of environments. Now, we also know that burning fat turns out to be really great for the brain. It stimulates nerve growth factors and sends a lot of cellular signals for the brain and the body to repair and maintain itself. What many of my colleagues have designed ketogenic diets that emphasize dairy and eggs as part of their ketogenic diets, and so they're also perhaps not quite so thoughtful about how you're organizing what carbs and what proteins that you do have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really concerned about the dairy in the eggs, because if you have an autoimmune problem, you're more likely to have an abnormal immune response to dairy proteins and egg proteins. And again, if you have a brain-related problem, there's a lot of molecular mimicry with dairy proteins that can lead to mistaken identity in the brain and autoantibodies against some brain structures, in particular in the cerebellum, having to do with balance issues. And we also know that some of these abnormal antibodies attacking brains are more, and dairy proteins are more frequent in Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, and multiple sclerosis. So for all of those reasons, I don't like to have people using dairy fat to get into ketosis. So we talk about ways of taking advantage of ketosis without dairy. And then I also do a lot of teaching about how to make sure, because we've changed the diet. You have to be much more thoughtful to be sure you've got plenty of minerals, that you have the appropriate fats, that you have the appropriate B vitamins and vitamin C. People with ketosis are often quite low on vitamin C as well. And so, great diet, but if you aren't careful about it, you can inadvertently create long-term problems with micronutrient deficiencies. So you feel great for about 18 months, and then those micronutrient deficiencies begin catching up with you and creating a drag on your health. And you don't realize it's your diet because you felt so great when you went into ketosis in the beginning. You don't realize you're getting into trouble. And actually, my vegan friends can do that through the vegan mechanism as well. They feel great initially as a vegan because they got rid of the processed food and the sugar, and they don't realize that they created some nutritional deficiencies with the vegan diet. Because again, while you can be a vegan and be healthy, you have to do it in a very thoughtful way so you don't end up with B vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies.
And I would say certain fatty acid deficiencies as well.
Fat acids and protein. So you're at risk as a vegan. You have to do it in a very, very thoughtful, careful way. And unfortunately, I know too many vegans who stop eating meat and haven't learned how to properly structure their diet and get into troubles.
Right. Yeah. I address in my book the DHA being a nutrient
Key.
that's so key to brain health, and yet it's missing from most vegan diets. The only way we can get DHA is through. Go ahead, Dr. Walls.
Well, so animal sources are really the most efficient way of doing that. There
Mm-hmm.
are some refined algae sources for
Algae.
DHA. And so if the vegans know to go get the DHAs from algae sources, that will work for them. But unfortunately, many are not aware of that.
And many don't eat algae. It's not really
Usually not.
common in our diet.
Usually not.
Usually not.
It actually, with algae, you do have to be careful because you can think of the red bloom. You can end up with some toxins in the algae. So even that has to be nuanced.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Very true. So, what other revisions have you brought to the table with your
Yeah.
revised version?
So, in my first book, I talked a lot about the role electrical stimulation muscles had in my recovery and my very close collaborations with my physical therapist. Now, since then, there has been more research that looked at the research that we've done with eSTEM in using eSTEM for people who are paralyzed because of a spinal cord injury or have severe disability and have minimal walking. And so we use electrical stimulation of muscles in that situation to reduce the harm of inactivity. And with correct training, if you have a little bit of volitional control left, we can improve that, improve the strength, improve the control, and accelerate recovery. So that is really powerful for people who have incomplete spinal cord injury, strokes, neuromuscular problems like progressive MS. And so I spend a lot more time, again, talking about what we've learned in terms of neuro rehab and how to find these types of technologies and to incorporate them into your recovery plan.
So, are you talking about neurostimulation regrowing at the spinal cord level?
So what I'm talking about is if you have a complete transection, and you can use the electrodes to drive cycling in your arms or your legs. You may not ever yet be at a point where they're going to be walking, but by driving your arms and legs to do this muscular work, you're having a dramatic impact on quality of life, dramatic impact on bone health, uh, muscle health, and the inflammatory molecules in the bloodstream, because our physiology depends on muscle activity, and we don't have that. It shifts our molecules into a much more inflammatory pattern. So adding eSTEM reduces the harm of inactivity. If you have a little bit of control left, so when I'm doing the electrical work driven by my eSTEM devices, that I am volitionally contracting my muscles at the same time that these devices are contracting the muscles. Now, in addition to growing more muscles, I'm growing the connection between my brain and the muscles. And that, this is a long process. It's not going to happen in a week. But if you're willing to do the work and invest the time, you can strengthen that connection between your brain and your muscles. You can improve your control. You can improve your muscle mass. And I talk about that research. And again, I talk about how to find these devices and these types of professionals to assist you with that. So that even if you're paralyzed and there's no hope yet of regrowing the spinal cord, there's a lot of benefit to continuing to exercise, even electrically driven exercise, because our chemistry all works much better when we exercise. And if you can do a little bit of contraction and you're willing to do the work, we can grow more muscles. We can improve your connection between your brain and your muscles. And with time, improve your coordination, improve your strength, improve your function.
Beautiful. I just want to remind everybody of the most important mnemonic in neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together wire together.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're firing these pathways and we do it over and over and over and over and over again, that connection is more established and we can rehabilitate that.
So when I wrote my book 5 years ago, the idea of neuroplasticity was not as well embraced. And too many professionals did not think that severe disability with progressive MS could be reversed. We now are beginning to appreciate that the brain is remarkably plastic. We can create new patterns. We can create new patterns with our mental health issues. We can create new patterns with our autonomic nervous issues. And we can create new patterns with our motor control. And we talk about that in the book. You absolutely can do this.
You absolutely can do this. And it's not, the answer is not in the pill. The answer is in you.
The answer is in you.
Yes.
And being willing to do the work and being willing to imagine the possibilities. Another thing that I talk a lot about is we're dealing with changing behaviors. It's really hard for humans to change behavior, forego pleasure today for benefit in the future. That's a tough thing for us to do, for everyone. And how do we make it more likely that we can be successful to forego today's pleasures for greater benefit in the future? So we talk a lot about addiction, behavior change, life's meanings, life's purpose, to give people more tools so they could grow their internal motivation to work for this bigger goal in their lives and themselves. I think that's really important. We have to acknowledge that, yep, changing behavior is hard. Giving up immediate pleasures today is hard. But here are the tools that will help you be more successful.
That's perfect. That's perfect, Dr. Wahls. We're very much on the same page. Working with clients, mindset is so important. And choosing where we place our attention, what pathways we want to encourage in our brains, in our thought patterns, affects our actions, which absolutely affect our physiology.
And the language that we say, our self-talk, to say, I can't stop eating the sugar. You can just switch that to, in the past, I struggled with eating too much sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have the possibility that that's going to change. So we talk about how important it is to think about the language that we use for ourselves as we're talking about the struggles that we face and the triumphs that we plan.
Thank you for saying how important language is, because absolutely, I have a friend who says, if you don't want it, don't say it, because what we're doing is giving our brain instructions on what to do. So if we say we can't do that, well, then your brain's like, you can't do that. So we're not going to do that. But I love what you just said. In the past, I struggled with this.
In the past, it was hard.
Yes. And now there's possibility, and not only a possibility, but we can set our mind to
the future,
create the reality we want.
Yes. In the future, I will be better at this.
Yes.
In the past, it was really hard. But in the future, I'm learning how to do it more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Or even in the present, I'm getting better at this right now.
Correct. And today I'm going to I choose to do this.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. So when does this book come out?
So March 17th is our release date. The book will be available everywhere where books are sold. It's packed with information. A third of the book is new information, new guidance on how to make the diet more specific to your needs, on the many ways you can get in ketosis that do not involve dairy and eggs. And there are ways to do this. and how to monitor your lipids to sort out which fat is the right fat for you to use to get into ketosis, the strategies for longevity, and then because some folks do so much better when I'm right there with them, helping them, inspiring them, getting them to do all these changes together in community. So we now have an in-person seminar, the Wahls Protocol seminar. We do that every summer. And so that is life-changing for, again, hundreds and hundreds of people come to this event where we celebrate all of these changes together and practice these skills. We sing and dance and just have a marvelous good time. And we eat a lot of great food.
Yes, yes. I believe it. And so I love that you're still researching and you're
Yes.
doing research on MS patients.
So the current study.
Yeah.
So this is so exciting, Kevin. So we're taking people who've been newly diagnosed with MS, who have been offered drugs that have declined them and want to use diet and lifestyle. Assuming that they qualify, we'll get them trained in the therapeutic diet and lifestyle. And we'll compare them to newly diagnosed MS patients receiving standard of care, taking the newest drugs. We're going to get measures of quality of life, walking, thinking, vision, and biomarkers, including MRIs. We'll get them at baseline in 12 months. And my goal is to get 100 folks in this next year, because if I can show that these two groups at baseline 12 months are equivalent, then, because what I really want to answer is, are people harming themselves by declining drugs and doing just diet and lifestyle? Or is it equivalent? Or is diet and lifestyle having a superior outcome? And we don't know that. No one's been able to compare the two head-to-head prospectively. And we'll be the first lab to do that. We're incredibly excited. We're very grateful for this opportunity. So people newly diagnosed with MS, you can reach out to our study team at msdietstudy@healthcare.uiowa.edu.
Perfect. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. So yeah, definitely if you have MS, reach out to Dr. Wahls. The only downside with studies like this is you are randomized, right?
No, in this study we are not, because
Really?
Because the first thing we're trying to do is to show what is the safety of declining drugs. So in order to be eligible, you have to be newly diagnosed and have been offered and declined the drugs. We'll compare you to a group of newly diagnosed folks who are taking the drugs.
Perfect.
And then we'll show that's safe or not safe. We'll understand what that shows. Then the next study would be a randomized study, because then I can talk about what is the level of risk with not taking the drugs.
I see. So what phase is this in?
Well, in a drug trial, we call it 0, 1, 2, and 3, but this is not a drug trial. This would be called a quasi-experimental because it's not randomized. And of course, we'll be criticized because it's a non-randomized trial. However, the strength that we have is that it's a prospective collection of the data. And when people are first diagnosed, you don't really know if they're going to have a benign disease or an aggressive disease. And if they have a lot of lesions in their head, can we turn off those lesions with 12 months using diet and lifestyle? And are we turning them off at the same frequency that the drugs are turning off the lesions? Those are really important questions that we are thrilled we're going to be able to answer.
That's really exciting. And will you be working with these participants personally?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Yes. So if any of our listeners are newly diagnosed with MS and you
reach out to us,
please reach out.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely. I love that you're moving things in the direction to change people's lives. It's phenomenal, and change the standard of care.
And that's what it takes. You have to have peer-reviewed, published research.
And I want to talk about the standard of care quickly. The standard of care was coined for medical malpractice cases, and it's defined in a medical malpractice case as the type and level of care an ordinary prudent healthcare professional with the same level of training and experience would provide under similar circumstances in the same community. So if you want the ordinary, same, similar results, go with the ordinary, same, similar standard of care. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate the tenacity and the work you do to get things very legitimate in the research and to become the new standard of care, thereby improving neurorehabilitation when it comes to multiple sclerosis dramatically.
5 years ago, I was called eccentric, an oddity, maybe dangerous for creating false hope. But now, in these 5 years, the neurology neuroscientists, are acknowledging that cognitive decline, brain atrophy is a risk for people with MS, and that engaging in daily exercise, a stress-reducing practice, and a nutrient-dense diet is critical to preserving brain function. Of course, they want everyone to take disease-modifying drugs in addition, and I'll let that to the neurologist to decide. But it's very heartening to see that the neurologists are now agreeing a nutrient-dense diet is key. We've analyzed our diet. We've published that in peer-reviewed literature, high impact in the dietitian world that shows that, yes, the Wahls diet is nutrient-dense, vastly superior to the standard American diet and superior to the healthy eating plan, consistent with the dietary guidelines. So the neurology scientists are all agreeing diet and lifestyle, everyone should be doing that. We'll begin to do the research that answers the question, what is the risk of doing diet and lifestyle without drugs? Oh, I don't know that yet. But everyone, whether you take drugs or not, should be following a diet and lifestyle plan to protect your brain.
Right, because you were taking drugs.
I was taking drugs.
Yeah.
That went relentlessly downhill.
Mm-hmm.
Relentlessly. My trigeminal neuralgia, 27 years, relentlessly worse. The MS, 7 years, relentlessly worse. In the wheelchair, 4 years, relentlessly worse. Despite seeing the best people in the country taking the newest drugs costing tens of thousands of dollars. And once I modified my diet and lifestyle in a very particular way, my pain is gone, my brain fog is gone, my mobility is steadily improving, and my neurologist agrees that I can come off my drugs because said there's no benefit and there clearly was risk. So we weaned me off the drugs over a 2-week period, and I've been off disease-modifying drugs since March of 2008.
I wanted to bring up one thing you said that you've been criticized of providing false hope.
Oh yeah, isn't that amazing? False hope vegetables.
False hope. And false hope, I mean, I survived a severe traumatic brain injury. Statistically, 90% never wake up. And just my existence provides false hope. And actually, it was the first paleo effects I attended, and I brought up this position I'm in, and in providing false hope to who is it, Rob Wolf. And Rob Wolf told me there's no such thing as false hope. Hope is hope.
Hope is hope.
And hope is powerful.
And then on top of that, I was severely criticized for teaching the public what I was doing and writing my book and doing the TED Talk and interviewed by many, many folks. Sometimes they're pretty hostile, pretty rude. And I'm like, you know what? I feel morally compelled to tell the public exactly what I'm doing. Tell them my story. Tell them the rationale behind the way I've designed my interventions. Tell them about the research that I'm doing. And I'll do all that simultaneously and let the public decide if they think they want to wait for the peer-reviewed, randomized, double-blind controlled trials to make the change,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. Or do they want to decide that the interventions that I designed and I am testing in clinical trials are safe enough that they want to implement them with the help of their primary care doc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at first the university was a little unsure about the fact that I'm talking so freely about my study design and what I'm researching all the time, because a lot of scientists are much more secretive about what they're doing. But now they've decided, because the public believes in my work, it supports my work, and gives us philanthropic donation that let us do study after study after study, and let us fund the next study that we're doing, that now the university thinks that yes, the work I'm doing is brilliant, and my public disclosure of what I'm doing and why is also brilliant.
So it is amazing what you're saying about feeling morally obligated, morally compelled. We're very similar in the sense that we've regained so many of our abilities, and because we've regained so many of our abilities, we have this ability to tell a story and to be honest and open about it. And it's a compelling story that harnesses a lot of attention. And I feel because we have that ability, we have a responsibility to use that to positively influence the most lives in the greatest way. And the enormity of the respect I have for you is, well, it's enormous. So thank you for that. Thank you for everything you're doing with that.
And the other thing is that for the years of suffering that I had, the 27 years of worsening trigeminal neuralgia, 7 years of worsening MS, 4 years of worsening disability in a tilt-recline wheelchair, I now realize it all had to happen that way in order for me to do all the work that it took to relearn and rethink about disease and health the way I do, and to have the privilege of this enormous recovery story that has allowed me to be so effective in teaching clinicians, teaching medical students, teaching the public just how much recovery is possible when we use a therapeutic diet and lifestyle. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm immensely grateful. And I've been talking about my gratitude for my illness for a long time. My kids, who were very young and had their lives greatly shaped by having this level of disability in the family. And it was very hard for them to hear me talk about being grateful for having MS and grateful for the disability that I experienced. But my kids have gotten a little older, a little wiser. My son's 28, my daughter's 25, and I've now heard them talking about what they learned by watching how our family had to cope with the challenges of progressive MS and the challenges of the horrific pain from the trigeminal neuralgia. So it was a gift. Difficult as it was, there were some profound gifts for me and for my two kids.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate with that completely as well. Like we find gratitude, and others are like, that was really, really hard for me too. And working with clients who often have a loved one in a serious situation, it's like they're survivors as well because they're going through a traumatic experience.
Correct. Things can be very difficult, very brutal. There's all sorts of pain that you did not want to have. But deep within all of that pain, there are gifts that you can find that allow you to grow into a newer level, a newer insights, a bolder vision, a more impactful vision. And yes, there may be also immense pain, immense loss. That is true. but often there is some profound gift that can be discovered as well.
Absolutely. For everybody, finding the gifts in things that um, appear to be a loss. There are so many different ways to look at any situation. So
Correct.
many different perspectives that we can take. And the perspective in which we choose to place our attention makes all the difference in the trajectory of our thoughts moving forward and
Yeah,
the trajectory of our lives.
I think we share that deeply, Kevin. I talk about how we change our behaviors, how we change our habits, and grow the internal motivation to do challenging tasks. And that's another big part of the revision in my book, because none of us change just because we're told, hey, it's a good idea, you ought to eat kale. Well, it's always a much more complex task than that. And none of us start exercising because someone said, hey, Kevin, you ought to start running every day or lifting weights every day. It's a more complicated process, how we change, how we find the internal motivation to do that work. And so I spend a lot more time talking about how we find those gifts, how we grow that motivation, and how we create the environment that allows us to be successful with these new goals.
Mm-hmm. And you release your research papers. They're available online, right? They
Correct,
can go
correct. So,
get
so,
them.
so if you go to terrywalls.com/research papers, we'll give you a link so that you'll be able to get access to these GATE videos, which are very inspiring because you see people when they came in at their level of function, then after years worth of working with us, where we got them. And so those videos are very, very inspiring. And then we have our many papers that are available, again, from the many studies, the detailed nutritional analyses. So wonderfully inspiring, hopeful. And if your physicians are feeling like, well, food diet, it doesn't matter, your primary care doc should be pretty fired up about vegetables. They should be pretty fired up about exercise. They should be pretty fired up about stress reduction. If they aren't, fire them. Get a new one.
Yeah, I think medicine has come far enough to go back and recognize that food really matters, and
Well,
it's
more of us are. We have a few old
yeah.
farts that are not, but it's certainly more and more physicians are recognizing food matters, exercise matters, diet, a stress-reducing practice matters.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And supplementation as well. Like there's definitely a lot of physicians who think there was some questionnaire I saw where was it like 90% of doctors were like supplements don't matter, and it's like how many of you take a supplement, and like 80% did.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So yeah, we're coming full circle on bringing things back to the basics, which is food matters. We clearly have known that for a long time, and we forgot that in
Yeah.
this industry, profit driven medical industry that really unfortunately doesn't give a whole lot of credence to the power of nutrition.
The other observations that I want to make is when people talk about vitamins and supplements, they can be helpful, but food is the basis. If you eat a lot of sugar and processed foods, you're giving your gut bacteria the wrong foods that stimulate overgrowth of disease-promoting bacteria. And if we eat these radical things known as vegetables, and if we eat appropriate sources of protein, and then a good source of healthy fats, our bodies will have the building blocks that we need to do the chemistry of life and to build and repair ourselves.
Yeah, when we
Food is just
realize
so critical.
when we last talked, you said you can't supplement your way out of a bad diet.
Correct.
You can't.
And you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet.
Nope. There's it's so important, and that's what I love about your work, and why I incorporated so much of what you're talking about into my own recovery. Is it's the building blocks to our neurology, and honestly, for the brain to be healthy, everything in the body needs to be healthy. Like if we're unhealthy in our body, that crosses our blood-brain barrier, inflames our brain, screws up our digestion, which screws it all up, and it's this vicious cycle.
Correct.
So we need to clean up our entire body, pay attention to our detoxification pathways, which is through our liver and our skin, sweat, poop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I appreciate you so much, Dr. Wahls. It is always such a pleasure to speak with you. Is there anything else? Where can our audience find more about you, and what else?
So please come to terrywalls.com, Terry, Walls, WAHLS.com. Pick up our research papers at terrywalls.com/research papers. And if you have a new diagnosis of MS, reach out to our study team at msdietstudy@healthcare.uiowa.edu.
All right, perfect. And we'll put all of that in the show notes. I am so excited for it. I'm so excited for your new book to come out.
It's gonna be good.
Yeah, yep. I'm sure it will be, considering your work in the past. So good. And I just appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
You're welcome.
Isn't she great? I have so much respect for that woman, what she's accomplished, where she's paying it forward. I mean, she's a role model to me, and yeah, phenomenal. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider supporting us. Patreon.com, patreon.com/AIBI for Adventures in Brain Injury. And if monetary support is not really an option, just by leaving a review, you are really helping us get out there and get this information to more people, so that we can change the standard of care, which, as you heard me say, is the type and level of care an ordinary, prudent healthcare professional with the same level of training and experience would provide under similar circumstances in the same community. We can go beyond the ordinary, same, similar standard of care. And I would love your assistance in doing so, and your reviews make a huge difference. And that's reviews of this podcast, reviews of my book on Amazon, reviews of my Facebook pages. They're all extremely helpful. So yeah, if you could do that, super appreciative. Also, if you're interested in coaching I do, and consulting that I do, I consult people who have a loved one in as early as while they're in a coma, throughout the entire recovery process. I mean, the fact is, there's so much that we can do while somebody's in a coma that is outside of the standard of care, and that gets much better results than the ordinary, same, similar standard of care. So reach out to me. You can go to feedabrain.com/consult and just fill out the form and schedule a time. Or you can email me at consult@feedabrain.com. In the show notes, you're going to have Dr. Terry Wallace links and everything that she was talking about, where you can get the studies. You can see the videos of how her work is transforming people's lives. And yeah, those will all be in the show notes. And I think that's about it, y'all. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being listeners to this podcast. I appreciate you guys so much. And I will chat with you next time. Adios. Someone take me to a doctor.